Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. Firstly, thank you so much for coming to this session. I know there was so many, different, brilliant sessions to choose from. So we are very honored to have you here with us today. From those outside of Cape Town who are here today, welcome to the Cape Colony. When you go home, please tell everyone at home that we are still fighting. The war is not yet lost. And I also want to say welcome to all the bad women in the audience. You are seen, you are loved. And before we start, I also think it's necessary to acknowledge the space that we are in today. The Homecoming Center forms part of the District 6 Museum, which has for a long time and continues to be a place of resistance, remembrance, and reclaiming. So it's important to honor where we are today. So with that being said, we have a lot to talk about, and honestly, not that much time. So I'm going to go straight into introducing you to our lovely panelists today. I'll start on the far end. Zukiswa Wanner is an acclaimed South African author known for her diverse body of work, including novels such as The Madams, Men of the South, and her latest book, Love, Marry, Kill. She has also written children's books like James Loves Bananas, and of course, if you haven't read it yet, please, Black Pimpernel, Nelson Mandela on the Run. So Zukiswa has also received numerous accolades, and honestly, it's a very long list, but I do want to point to a specific incident that happened recently. Zukiswa was I'm so sorry. Zukiswa, this is such an important point, and I just want to make sure that I get it 100% correct. But Zukiswa won the Goethe Medal from the German government, given to artists for contributions to culture. But she returned it in protest because of the ongoing genocide in Palestine. And I just want to give a special moment and thank her for that. I'm going to skip you, Nick, but I will come back, I promise. Qarnita Loxton was born in Cape Town and is a daughter of the city, starting off with a career in the legal field and currently working as an executive coach. Qarnita's first novel, Being Kari, was published in 2017, followed by Being Lily and Being Diane. She is also a co-author of Chasing Marion, and her latest novel, What's Wrong with June, has also just been published this year. And then last but not least, we have Nick Mhlongo. Nick is a proud son of Soweto. His first novel, Dog Eat Dog, was published by Kwela in 2004. Actually, all our authors are Kwela authors, so shout out to them, I guess. The game is rigged. You have to give, capital its dues at times. Nick has an extensive and extremely exciting and celebrated body of work, including novels and short stories. He's also worked on a screenplay for an animated children's series and scripts for a comic book magazine. His recent work, The City Is Mine, has also just been released in 2024. Please welcome the panelists and thank them for being with us today. So, bad women, and Zukiswa, if I may start with you.
No.
Please, I think it would be amazing if you could help us unravel and think about what it means to be a bad woman, right? We are in this culture war at the moment. No, tell us.
Glad I'm not first.
We're in this culture war at the moment, and the concept of womanhood is shifting, and there are tensions around us. So I think it would be interesting to kind of start off unraveling this topic. What is a bad woman?
I have no idea. I think when I was growing up, there were certain things where they said women are supposed to do A, B, C, and D. And I think as you grow up, you learn to get out of those judgmental phases. One of my favorite things that happened not too long ago is where there is a politician was having an affair with a younger man. and he recorded it, a female politician, and he recorded it, and then he tried to blackmail her for a certain amount of money, and she said she wasn't going to pay it, and he said, well, I'm going to expose this. So he then went and released this video. I think those of you on Twitter might remember this story. He released a video of this older woman, and she then got him arrested because he didn't have consent to release it. But I heard from a very well-placed source that she had a meeting a couple of days after, and when she got in the meeting, everybody had been there and they'd been talking about this particular situation. And she walked in and everybody kept quiet. And she said, how? Have none of you ever seen a naked woman before? Can we get on with the meeting? And she proceeded. So I think bad woman very much varies from the society and from where you are and the people around you, really. So a little town in the Karoo, for instance, will look at the answer to bad woman very differently from a sex worker in Hillbrow.
It reminds me also of, I guess, a question of, is it bad to be a bad woman as well? To continue from your point. There's this very popular saying going around at the moment that says, I support all her rights and her wrongs. And for those not in the TikTok know, it basically means that, sometimes women are allowed to be bad and to make mistakes. And do you not think that, men are possibly held to a higher standard of, or women, are possibly held to a higher standard of morality,
Yeah. I think one of my favorite things about Gen Zs right now is the way they use the word baddie to talk about women. It's my favorite. What you call it, because it's like, you're bad. Like, it's like Michael Jackson bad, but baddie, So I like that. Just to highlight, I am trans Gen Z.
And also to make the point, before we continue, that, Owami in your book, also please buy it, everyone, Love, Marry, Kill, is almost a character that we want her to do bad, We are waiting for her to do bad. And so maybe also there is a need for women to be more bad. And I guess with that, I'll go to you, Qarnita. I'm sorry, Nick, but,
No problem.
it is what it is. It is what it is. There are also certain moments in your book as well. And I'm sorry, I have to do this because it is so good. All of these books are so good. What's Wrong with June? Where June also, engages with these questions of, am I bad? Is following my desires bad? And there was a specific, I would say, instances where her concept of motherhood was also brought into question, and she felt as if she was a bad woman because she was being a quote-unquote bad mother. And to kind of continue with that conversation, we are also seeing a resurgence of traditionalist ideas of what it means to be a mother, right? And to be self-sacrificial and to give of, yourself completely and entirely to your child. And there's actually a line from your book that I want to read, where June says, "Nobody tells us about this part of mothering, that the day can come when you choose yourself over your child," which I thought was so powerful. And so I'd like you to kind of...
Sure, but firstly, is there anything better than being quoted back to yourself? Fantastic. Well, the story of June is What's Wrong with June? And the title is, I guess, a throwback to, whenever a woman does something that she's not supposed to do, you get that question, what's wrong with her? And in this instance, June is a financially independent, very strong, early 40s woman who lives in suburbia. She's married, she lives with her husband, she lives with her mother-in-law, she lives with her 23-year-old daughter. And things are okay. They're not brilliant, they're not bad. but she's dissatisfied with her life. And so this drive that she has manifests itself on New Year's Eve when she listens to the radio and it says, basically, make the most of your life. So she's got this conflict within her where her life is actually good enough. She's got a life that many women would be happy with, but she is dissatisfied. And that, I guess, is the first part of what's a bad woman, is that she's not satisfied. And so she's pushing forward. And then, whether she's a bad woman depends on who you ask. And within her family, she doesn't really have a friendship circle. She's got a best friend, Carla, who lives in Mauritius, and she compares her life to her friend's Instagram reel and finds it lacking. Because she lives in suburbia, Carla lives on an island with warm water.
I mean, we understand.
So, you feel all of that. So the thing with June is that she's stepping out of her lane. She's a professional woman. She's deciding to up and leave, essentially. And so the line that you've read is where she is being bad in the sense that she's not living up to the maternal ideals of what she has placed on herself and what society has placed on yourself, that you always put your children first. So it is a young adult, so it's not like she's abandoning a baby.
Exactly.
But there is a sense that as a mother, in her particular life, that she doesn't put herself first. And so that's the first sense of badness, if you can put it like that. But I think whether she's a bad woman depends on who you ask, depends on which society you live in.
I would say, as the eldest daughter
Yes.
of a single mother, I wanted to, send that page to my mother, because I think, especially as an adult myself, who's been living outside of the home for 7 years, I think my mother and many mothers of her generation, in South Africa, on the continent, they hold on to this ideal of what a good mother is. What will the rest of the family say if I go on a date? Like, I'm telling my mom, and please, I'm speaking out of the house, but I tell my mom, go on dates. You're single, your children are grown-ups, enjoy yourself, but there's still this almost fear of being seen as a bad mother. And so that was very interesting for me to realize.
June is also not supporting her husband, so she's not being a supportive wife. So it's also this idea of a woman always being constantly supportive, bolstering her partner, bolstering her family, bolstering her child. So it's that stepping out of her lane. And I think ultimately that's how people get judged, is when they step out of what their expectations are of them.
And then also the ways in which our families, and you think that, okay, I'm 40 years old, I'm 50 years old, I would think that, okay, that means that I don't care what my family thinks about me anymore, right? But it seems that almost, and this is my reading, I guess, as someone in my mid-20s, that as you get older, the opinions of your family start meaning more, and they keep you in a kind of, moral grounding. I don't know. Do you think that's a fair statement to make?
Should I speak out of my own house? It depends on the day, quite honestly, if I think from not being in my mid-20s anymore. Some days what your family says means as much to you as when you were in your 20s. I guess it depends on what it's about. And it's, at this point, also who is your family? When you're in your 20s, your family is maybe very much predefined. As you get older, your sense of family also changes. It could be bigger or smaller. So like, when you're in your 20s, maybe you think about what all your cousins would consider. When you're older, it's maybe your children.
Zukiswa, can I ask you to weigh in? Because I think a lot of the themes spoken about now in terms of family, in terms of motherhood, in terms of being a bad daughter, a bad sister, a bad aunt, also come across very clearly in Love, Marry, Kill.
I think, as Oami has a way of what it means to be a woman and what it means to be a good woman, and she's grown up with that. And then, as she proceeds, she then realizes perhaps it's not everything she thinks she is, but also she has been very judgmental of her own mother, and there is that intergenerational conversation to be had. And, so you see that even with June, where she has lost a sense of herself, and you see it also in the woman character in Nick's book, where it's like, is she actually like, is she being conniving, or is she realizing that she needs to have some power so that she says, hey, you know what, tech. You know, so there are those conversations to be had, because, well, you know, why you oppressing yourself? And I think all three of these main characters see that in them, you know, in themselves and in each other. But maybe Nick can tell us more.
Yeah, I was about to. Sorry, Nick, but you know, as they say on Twitter, you were in women's business a little bit.
He knows a bad woman.
But I mean, yeah, let's get to welcome to the conversation. But I would be very interested as a starting point to also, you know, when looking at the ex-fiancé of the main character in your book, Azanya, I felt when I was reading her that she was a kind of caricature of Twitter incels' understanding of what a woman is. And for those that haven't read the book, please do. I'm going to spoil it a little bit, but Mangi's fiancé, Aza, is money hungry. She lies, she deceives, you know, she emasculates him. She just basically after what's in his pockets when he loses his job, she kind of essentially throws him away. Extremely cruel. And when I was reading it, I was like, you know, I feel like this is the current conception of what it means to be a bad woman in a very Twitter-esque kind of way. Would you agree with that statement? Am I?
No, I wouldn't agree. Okay, good afternoon. It just feels a bit awkward, you know, to be in a panel talking about bad women. More especially if you are said to be a bad man yourself. So, but I'll try to answer that, you know. I think the topic itself, and I just realized later that it's perhaps too judgmental. You know, it's judging other people as to what they do. It's like monitoring kind, you know, monitoring people that it's moralistic, that there are these people that do bad and the people that do the good thing. So that's why it's quite difficult to, when I was just like going back to a question of Aza, for instance, my main character, if you ask me, there are actually, that's one of the reasons why the book is best-selling at the moment, is because of that particular character. Because people think like this, they can relate to this particular woman. And there are people that say she is bad. And always, wherever I go, I'm made to judge her. And it feels so bad for me because I'm a creator, you know. So I think, you know, sometimes I think I'll add to what Zukiswa and Qarnita have been saying, that what's bad, it depends on where you come from, the point of view where you come from. So, for example, I'll talk about the main character, for instance, the fiancé that you asked about. He is being told that women that come from the city are bad because they've got bad values and stuff, you know. And who is telling him? It's a grandfather who is old and has the old principles. His world is static. So characters, I mean, I think Aza, my character Aza, reflect what is happening today, the movement of the character, you know, the movement of people. And also she reflects what is going on, how she poses a question as to how do we, for instance, align ourselves to modernity, you know. Sometimes to other people, modernity is bad. A woman with long nails, bad, you know. A woman, yeah.
Whoops.
Yeah, so that's why I'm just saying that it's kind of a moralistic. It's like trying to come with your own standards of people. It's too much. it's not, I just felt like it's not the right standard to judge people, you know. Yeah. There's no bad woman. There's a bad relationship. And there's also a bad social upbringing as well. Yeah, so whatever we do reflect where we come from. Yeah.
So, if there are no bad women, are there also no bad men?
I'm not sure. I didn't say that.
All bad. No, but
Ladies and gentlemen, our German ambassador.
I think it's also interesting, for me at least, as an organizer, as an activist, as someone who tries to engage in feminist studies, to read the book and I hear that what you're saying is that you don't want to judge Azza and you don't want to make a moralistic statement of who she is, but it is a conversation with what's happening in the broader sphere of discourse around femininity and masculinity and womanhood and good womanhood. So, I mean, was that intentional? Were you wanting to engage that conversation, or was that kind of just how the characters came to life?
When I was writing the book, I was actually writing about something that happens to human beings, I wasn't thinking that this only happens to men and women. I wasn't thinking it. I was thinking about the relationship between a man and a woman, a relationship that has gone bad. And I didn't want to put a blame to anyone, on this, whatever has happened that led to their breakup. I didn't want to put it. But, of course, when you write a book, it's only yours when you are writing it. But once the book is out there, it's published, it becomes anyone's book. So I also take the interpretation of everyone that has read the book. There are so many, I've come from so many launches, for instance. Many people have said, Azza is so bad, I couldn't do it. And somebody comes and say, I love that woman. So it just shows us how, the society is working. We always take whatever is convenient first to us, to say. So it was not really my intention to, I was just talking about relationship, and more especially I'm a realist writer, So whatever I write, I make sure that it reflects, it mirrors the society that I come from. So, and then if ever this society that I'm describing, that is my own society, it's accepted when you read it and you feel like, I know it. I know this person it means that I've done well in this writing.
No, definitely. And I mean, I guess to maybe just quickly ask a follow-up to that, would you say then that Azza is found commonly, if people are coming up to you and you've seen it? And I'm sorry, but I have to emphasize that Azza is, in many ways very representative of, a kind of idea of womanhood. And to use the term slay queen, I hate that term, but if that, makes sense. And do you think that is...
It's very interesting because these terminologies are very, generational. So I find the fact that, when I'm talking to a younger audience, they use that term a lot. And at some point, I know there's this term existing, But I had to, it's not only Azza, actually, what I'm saying, the characters that I've written other characters also in short stories format, for instance. People think like I'm writing about, slay queen, and I'm
do people think that's your...
No, I'm a little bit, is that, and I'm glad that people interpret that way, but that's not exactly how I was writing. As I say, I was writing about a relationship gone bad. And I was writing about, I was writing about the idea of a home, actually that was my main theme when I was writing that, that sometimes when you are sitting, when we think about home, we think about peace, we think about love, we think about sanity. So I was just writing to say that sometimes we get insanity from the people that we love. And the places that we call them home, maybe they are not home in a traditional sense of a way. And I just use that character because Aza is not in the book, it's not actually my main character. My main character actually is the city. Hence is the city is mine, you know. So I was writing about the city, that's why I use the city. But of course I've got peripheral kind of a story, you know, story B, which is
B-line
Aza.
story.
Which is Aza. And the story, of course, that is open to interpretation, people calling her slave queens. But in honest fact, she's not a bad woman from my point of view. She has been in a bad relationship herself. So, yeah.
And maybe, Zukiswa, I'll come back to you to maybe continue with that thought. Because, you know, we can defend women's wrongs and rights, but also there are bad women, you know, who do bad things. And I'm thinking Hillary Clinton.
Hillary,
you know,
Rosemary Ndlovu.
But I guess, and you know, I'm just thinking about Owami, and there is a point where she's speaking to her psychologist, her therapist, and she's reflecting on, you know, herself as a feminist, and she is causing pain to another woman and what that means for her. And so I guess, you know, my question is about when women are bad, and how they engage those type of questions, particularly from a feminist perspective.
Is Pumla Ola here? I think she's the one who should answer this one. No, I actually just wanted to highlight the complexities of it all. What we, she has justified it to herself in her brain. So the moral compass, you know, shifts depending on what you feel good about. So the person that she used to be would have been like, oh no, I would never. And then the person that she has become is like, well, you know, actually, it's, you know, this is like two grown, consenting adults. So, yeah, actually, ngenapi type of thing, right? So, I don't know, you know, where Owami quite lands with that. More so, I mean, obviously later on, when it dawns on her, like her mother as well, you know, and she realizes maybe it's not what I thought, or even, for that matter, Akani's mom, who is my second favorite character in the book, actually. My favorite being the gun guy.
No, shame. I'm not going to have any spoilers, but I do want to talk one-on-one about the ending because it broke my heart a little bit. But I think that in terms of, you know, our own understandings of being good and being bad and having those understandings outside of societal kinds of pressure, and maybe to come to you, Qarnita, I think, you know, as Zukiswa also said, that it often is in the character themselves to find their own, you know, compass of good and bad. But at the same time, I guess I wonder how bereft those, you know, compasses really are. Because I mean, even with June, it was actually watching Carla's Instagram. You know, she was also feeling a counter pressure. So even when we do kind of find our own compasses, there are still, you know, things that pressure or push us in those particular directions. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that.
Oh, sometimes I have very few thoughts. But
Not today, please.
no, but I think the pressure in June's instance is a combination of her own internal feelings of dissatisfaction, and then also the impact that social media has on her. Because her friend is presenting a highlights reel, and she is comparing her internal pressure to her friend's highlights reel. And so, you know, it's sort of the perfect storm for her. That makes her behave in a way that's not her normal, or her normal good behavior. And I also want to talk to the idea of being a good woman and a bad woman, or a bad man and a good woman, because June does some bad things. Her husband also has done some bad things. And I think, it's impossible to reduce any person or any character to good or bad. And what I wanted to do with June in particular was to highlight these choices that she makes that's out of the ordinary or that are bad, if you were to judge them. And then also to build empathy for her. Because we've all done things that we regret, that are objectively bad. And so to build empathy not only for the character, but also in a sense for ourselves. And so, it's to say she's a bad woman is a catchy title. You could also say her husband is a bad husband for some of the things that he's done. Her daughter is a bad daughter for not, for sort of being more attached to the dad, or for not giving her mother the freedom, not seeing her mother as a person. So all of the characters in my book, and I think in all of the books here, are actually bad. It's not just a bad woman, but there are elements of it. And I think the thing to do is to build empathy as a reader for those characters, but also then ultimately for ourselves, because which of us here hasn't done something that's bad? So anyway, those are my few thoughts. I don't know that
It
I've
was
got
great
more
thoughts.
left.
It was great.
With this viewers.
Absolutely brilliant. And maybe, Nick, to continue with the theme of empathy. I know we were on the hot topic of gender, but I also think that your book also spoke very clearly about socio-economic realities of Joburg and Cape Town, and I don't feel like we've touched on that as yet. And I think what your book also did is work towards establishing empathy when we also live in a society where people are just stuck in their bubbles. And so I'm also interested again to know if that was were you having that conversation? Was it a class critique? Or was that also just how the story kind of formulated itself by telling these authentic stories?
Yeah, I think the book itself also, you are quite right, actually. Or partially right, in a sense that, of course, the book focuses on, the social divisions, the class divisions, and the class divisions in terms of, but related to the city of Johannesburg, for instance. The fact that, everyone that comes into the city, that's, as far as I know, come to the city to make themselves rich. It's a city of gold for that matter. It's dubbed the city of gold. So everyone thinks like it's going to get this gold. So the social critic is what happens if this dream is not realized, So that's why you find people end up doing the things that they are having to do to survive. I have the main character, for instance, that always puts me into trouble, because the main character, one of the main characters is Bonnie, who is she's a prostitute,
Sex worker.
Yeah, sex worker. Yeah. So she does that, but it's all about survival. So this is the city of survival. It's a dog-eat-dog kind of a situation for everyone. So it's the survival of the fittest. That's based on class as well. So that's why I have categorized the different sections of the book. Like, for instance, in the brothel, it also happens, for instance, in the city itself. The city itself is full of, as you walk, you can see the different class structure, that are there. And also in the cemetery, the idea of the Braamfontein cemetery, for instance, where there's stark-naked kind of divisions. There's a burial for white people, burial for black people, burial for Indian, Actually, I only know of one black person buried there. So those are the things that it represents class and social status, as to who has the right to be buried here Even when you are dead, you are still categorized and
Definitely.
classified,
Definitely.
So that was my main thing about writing this kind of,
And I also will say it was incredibly interesting and fascinating reading it as a Cape Townian, who's been to Joburg only a handful of times to, kind of see the city through Mangi's eyes and understand how he also is, I guess, getting a shock, He was familiar with the streets and then he went to the suburbs and now he's kind of back to the, reality that the majority of people face in South Africa. And so I'm also interested in that journey that he went on, kind of being on the hustle and then, settling in the suburbs and now coming back to reality, you could argue.
Yeah, it is actually the reality of almost everyone, for instance, not everyone that I know, let me just be specific, that there are highs and lows. It represents the highs and lows in life. More especially when I was writing the book, I remember I started, when I physically wrote it, like typed it, it was during the time of COVID. And many people had lost their jobs, and they couldn't, some were well settled in middle class areas. They started going back to their roots. We call it the roots, back to Soweto, to the ghetto, But we have seen them, some of them, never gained their confidence again in terms of wealth, but some did as well, Yeah.
I think that we also are on such a precarious reality economically in South Africa and politically as well. And I also just wanted to, I guess, speak to that, impending doom. And I got the sense of that when, Mangi was also experiencing this deterioration of Joburg. And I thought about the Bree Streets, and I think it's also even mentioned, in the book. And so I guess, as you're writing this book and you're talking about the deterioration, the kind of falling down of the city, is that a kind of good representation of how you feel about Joburg, about how you feel about South Africa? Is that where you're at right now, that it's falling apart?
No, not in all sectors, I think, but also to say that things are good is an exaggeration, So, but I think one of the things that I was trying to highlight there was the relationship between the city itself and the mental breakdown. Because mental breakdown is something that, most especially with us, most from a black people's perspective, we have a different interpretation of when it happens. Like, for instance, it's mostly associated with ancestral spirit. We never associate it with, the fumes in the city, the smell of the city. So I was trying to highlight that, in most cases, it's not everything could be associated with spiritual, with the spiritual, the spirit of the ancestors. Some of the things are just, we see them. It's there. If it's associated with the decay of the city itself. Like, for instance, I'll give you an example, and I always give it, because I think it was most important. One of the places that I used to visit a lot in the city when I was young was the Johannesburg Library. That's where I became a writer today, And today is the place that is closed.
Yeah,
no one is talking about it.
Flooded.
The first time when I was in high school, for instance, one of the places that they used to take us on a school trip, was the Joburg Art Gallery, where I first saw Gerald Sikoto's, different kind of, exactly. But now the space is closed. And imagine writing this book from a perspective of a faraway city, whereby it's COVID time. And during COVID time, they said close, everything is closed, the shop is closed, but bookshop must be open, and a place whereby whenever you walk, you see people reading in the trays. In South Africa, we no longer have trays, you know? And then both people are reading in the parks. In South Africa, we don't have parks. You know, they're housed drug addicts and whatever, you know. So I was just comparing, also trying to compare. That's the first time I tried to understand when people say the quality of life. The quality of life doesn't mean to have anything. It's to have something something that is working. So if the train is not working, and then there's no reading in the library, no one is talking about art, you know. So it causes that urban space itself can cause a lot of mental breakdown. Same as my character is gaining that mental breakdown. That's why when he's walking around the city, he is reminiscing what was happening before. This used to be a library. Oh, whenever, those who are born around that time, you know,
What
olden
time?
days, yeah.
In the olden days.
Yeah, there was a time whereby, you know, you simply go to the city, so that you hear that somebody has released a CD or something, so that they play it for you and look and listen, or Kohino in Johannesburg, you know, and then you go back, you are happy because your mind is clear. But of course, I'm not trying to romanticize this city, because a city is part of the, you know, it's a moving space. So it's changing. But is this the change that we want this city that I'm writing about to be? So when you look into how I wrote the book, for instance, I wanted people to look into the city now, before, and in the future. You know, this is the city that they want to be. But using those main characters, using their relationship troubles to mirror what is happening also in the city itself. Yeah.
I quickly just want to pivot the conversation. We have about 4 minutes left before we go into question and answer. And there was a question I wanted. Sorry, I feel like I'm always excluding you, Nick, but, you know, we need to talk.
Yeah.
But in the books, What's Wrong with June and in Love, Marry, Kill, what struck me, and I was also reading it in close proximity to each other, is that the experiences of June and Owami were so similar, right? And we're living in a time where, I mean, we have been divided for a long period of our history, if not, you know, I'm not an Afro-pessimist, but for our history as colonized, as black people. And these, you know, differences are so, you know, I guess, shouted from the rooftops now more than ever. And here are two women who people would say, okay, but they're so different. They have such different experiences, and yet in the books, they have such similar journeys. And I thought maybe we could quickly comment on that.
You got the nails?
Who's the baddie? Who's the...
Sure. I don't actually know how to answer that story, because that question, because, you know, we obviously didn't collude when we wrote our novels. So they're completely independent of each other. The characters all follow their own trajectory. But I do think it is in some ways a universal truth for women that there is a lot of expectation. There's a societal and an internal pressure on how to behave and how you have to behave in a particular way. And so I think it is maybe a particular point in life that you feel it's time to step out, time to break free of whatever constraints there are within you. And the reasons for it in the novels are different. But ultimately it gets to a point of, I know it sounds very woo-woo to say, of self-actualization, that they express themselves, that they live, you know, they want to live in a way that feels authentic to themselves. And so I think that drive for authenticity is something that women feel. Or maybe it's something that's more, I don't want to say acceptable, but it's something that women are striving for, that, you know, you break out of it. Am I talking a lot of rubbish, or can... you can say, you can say.
I think you're actually right. The one similarity that they do have, in addition to, obviously, very coaching statement, self-actualization.
Yeah, that's what I was like.
In addition to that, is they're about around the same age, I think, and because of that, and in a way, both now have sort of grown children, and there's like a certain level of, you know, I sometimes see in conversation and just observing society that women will like maybe like, you know, hold themselves to themselves, if you will, because they're waiting for their children to be grown. They don't want to disrupt their lives. And so these women are like, you know, our children are grown, but also it's time I start thinking about me. But importantly, it's not even just Owami and June. I often like think about Akani's mom, who says sometimes a mother's actions are not about you.
Yeah.
You know, a woman, a mother is her own human being. So don't always, if you're a child, don't be so quick to judge and say, oh, my mom is doing this because she doesn't love you. Sometimes she just needs to do her. Leave her alone.
Finding herself outside of motherhood, being a wife. Okay, so let's do some questions. Okay, everybody don't look too excited. Okay, we have a hand over here. I think we'll take a round of 5 questions and then see where we go from there. So a hand over there. Just one question, guys, after all of that. Okay, hand over here.
Oh, you caught me by surprise. I'd like to ask you to Qarnita, how much of you is June?
Hectic.
You know, because sometimes I also feel like as a woman doing things, going a bit crazy. And you said it's a lady from Lansdowne, so I'm also closer to that area. So I'm so interested to know, you are also planning to leave your...
But the fun thing about that question is that I get asked that for every book. So when it was Carrie, it was like, how much of you is Carrie? How much of you is Lily? How much of you is Shirley? And with June, I think there's definitely some of it in me, because I started thinking about this book during COVID. And as we were coming out of COVID, I felt a lot of people around me and me myself feeling like I've survived this. We've come through this period of difficult and isolation and struggle. And now what am I going to do? How am I going to make this life that I have meaningful? And I felt that energy in people around me. And that became the character of June. So like with all my other characters, actually, there are parts of me in it. And I think that's the part of me that was the kernel of June, is how do we make meaning? How do we get beyond this difficult stage that we're at? And it's not confined to COVID. It's not only in COVID that you feel that kind of feeling. I think it's a human nature to, like, am I enough? Am I doing enough? But for me, COVID really drove that feeling home. And because I saw so many other people also feeling it, it came out. So maybe 30%.
Nice one.
We had a second hand over there, and then there was a hand in front. And maybe we get the questions first before we...
We might forget.
I will forget.
Okay, fair enough.
My question's for any of the authors or all of them who want to answer. So if we think of bad women being women who defy expectations, do you think women have not only the right but the responsibility to be bad? If I think my sister will always, if you do something that's too good, she would say, you're bringing the movement down. So do you think women, or do you hope through your books maybe to inspire some women to be bad? Should we be bad?
Let's let the men answer that.
It's difficult to speak for women.
Not a bad man, a wise man.
Yeah.
It's inadvisable, actually.
Exactly. So I'll pass it.
Well, yeah, I think I definitely wanted to encourage women to just do their thing, you know, to step out of what you think you're supposed to be doing. So if it has that effect of making you think about what is it that I want to do, go for it.
Okay,
Do you think
heard
Dr.
that.
Nandipa is a bad woman?
I'm
I'm
shooting
sorry,
you
I just
shots.
wanted to throw it out there, guys. It's topical. Don't answer, think about it.
There's a lot going through my head.
So yeah, thank you. I think my question is linked to the last one. It's interesting because when I listened to my brother there, he was very out to defend Azza and out to defend her not being a bad woman, because when we are all listening in, bad means you've done terrible things, you're mean, you're nasty, you don't have compassion, etc. Whereas I also want to understand from the writers, I'm 58 years old. When we used to say you're bad, we meant you're cool. You're with it. You have
Michael
it.
Jackson
You're an out there woman. You're not scared of anything. You're courageous. It actually was a compliment to be called bad. So I'm trying to understand, because I was lost sometimes where the bad you're talking about is so literally as in being mean, not nice. And sometimes I thought you were actually complimenting the characters that you're talking about as in being bad. So which one is it? Or is it a little bit of both?
Is that for me?
Zukiswa, I'll give that one over to you.
I think that was actually for Nick, wasn't it?
For all of
For
you.
all of us.
No, with me, I did say I like the Michael Jackson bad, and that's the reason why I said I appreciate Gen Z's using the term baddie for. Yeah, I rather like that term actually.
Well,
I'm only sad that I got to know about it after I'd finished writing my book.
okay.
You go.
No, I think for me, it's. I think I've been misled. You know,
Led astray.
I've been misled to think, like you are saying, to think that women that are strong and are go-getters are bad women. And I was misled also by society and also by patriarchy, also by where I come from, For instance, that's why I created these two characters in the book. One is Azza, who some think is bad. Even yesterday I was having an interview, somebody was saying she is bad. But I created this other character, a woman who is also a sex worker. And the work that she does to help men go through their pain in the brothel is amazing. But because she's a sex worker, she is seen as a bad woman, But when we look into what she's doing, she's helping many men, including Mangi, to hold on to his family,
She's a therapist.
So, yeah, exactly. That's exactly what she is. And at the same time, she is also studying towards a degree, working because of the situation, and then working to so that you can finance herself. Is that a bad woman? In where I come from, yes, only because she's a sex worker. So that's why I'm saying, I'm not sure who is a bad woman, who is not a bad woman. That's why I said earlier on, I think it's situational. Everything is situational. The person that I used to date, for instance, and we broke up, she's bad because she broke up with me. Yeah, exactly. The person that I'm dating now,
It's good.
very good. So it's as simple as that. Yeah.
Well, I can say that I didn't intend creating a bad woman character or a bad man or a bad daughter or any of that. It is characters that are fallible and have flaws and that made mistakes and also all do things that can be judged. And I think that's the core of this question around bad, because you judge them. You judge them from your perspective of where you come from, of what you know, of what your context is. And so how you judge determines what you think of them. And so for me, it's a wonderful now full circle moment, because I can end up with saying it's who you ask. It, you know, whether it's a bad woman depends on who you ask. And so this is the context for all of these characters.
And I think maybe to sum it up is also, you know, I think we live in a very polarized world, right? And there's these extreme opposites. And I think what each of the books have done in the empathy shown to the characters and showing the nuances of their decisions is also, you know, create that gray space and show that, you know, there are multiple truths as well, and people hold different truths of one instance. Is there any other questions? Okay, we have a question over there.
It's a really short one. I'd just love to hear from you what books have inspired you that have, let's say, bad women or complex women, characters that have really resonated or help you create empathy or inspire you. So what's on your reading list previously or currently that's inspired you with this kind of topic, however you choose to define it?
I'm not in my 20s. I have no more memory. So I can't remember anything except what I'm reading right now at the moment. So,
I have to say, Black Widow Society, you know, is quite interesting as far as women, you know, having been kind of taking their power back, where that is concerned. I think of My Sister Killjoy, you know, Amat I Do. Actually quite a...
Actually, I can remember now, Fear of Flying was what I remembered reading like 20 years ago. That did that.
So I think there are quite a few books that you know have done that, and Nervous Conditions, you know, and Maza Mengistu's, not the Shadow King, actually, particularly with this woman who is a sex worker, because interestingly enough, I have a woman who works in a brothel. She doesn't call herself a sex worker. She's a dancer. She's, but she's, you know, so she works in a brothel called The Brothel.
Yeah, so with me, I think there's one particular book I would recommend. And I think it's there, I saw it. It's called After Tears. So, and I've seen another one called, the one that I love as well, Madame Bovary. I loved it, you know. Yeah, but After Tears is number one recommendation.
Any other question to the panelists as we wrap up? Okay.
It's a bit of a question and an observation. So if we look at what we've called bad women through history, they seem to have two characteristics for me. One, they're not victims. And two, they seem to have a very clear understanding of how the patriarchy works and how they choose to interact with it. So the courtesan of the 1600s, the suburban housewife who's married for money and puts up with a lot because the credit card is paid, the slave queen, to me, they all embody an understanding of how the world works and how they've chosen to navigate that. So one of the things I would ask the authors, how much does the class of the woman we write about impact on how we see them? The middle class housewife who married for money versus the slave queen.
I don't know why you were, while you were talking, I just thought of the Scarlet Letter, actually. I think I really like to be able to play around. I don't know whether you guys do that. I like playing around with what you can do in different social settings. But always I want to give my characters, whether they're men or women, I want to give them agency. And so as far as bad women are concerned, even the woman in the village, I want to give her agency. I've got a story of a woman whose husband, brought some woman to the city, and then thereafter sent her to the village because she was pregnant. And then the mother-in-law sent the woman back, but the wife found out about it. And then she very publicly started going to see the village principal at around 5 in the evening. And those who've stayed in the villages know that 5 is already getting dark, but it's not dark enough. So everybody would see her going there, and she was having this affair. Maybe she was just going for conversation, but the husband got to know about it. And he came and he was outraged, and he called the village. He went to the headman, and the headman said, okay, and asked her and said, so this man has called us here because this woman, we found out that the principal that we invited to teach our children has been plowing in his field. And have you been getting plowed? To the woman. To which she responded, well, I'm not going to lie. Yeah, actually, we've been doing something, but he also did this and this. And then the court decided that the man was going to be fined 2 goats, the principal, for disrespecting the community that he was in. But the husband was going to be fined 2 goats for wasting the court's time because he knew what he had done. And the woman didn't have to pay a fine.
We are running out of time. In fact, we've already gone over time. But I think we can kind of do what we do as comrades in meetings and just go 10 minutes over and then we cut off. So, so if you could answer the question, and I know we had a last hand, and then please go ahead and ask that question. I think we can wrap up closing remarks.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have really much to add to that. I think it is, as you say, playing around with what you can make your character do and the setting that they come from. But for me, it was important to have a character that had agency, that was financially independent, and somebody that was also a breadwinner for her family. So I'm not sure that I'm adding anything more to what you're saying. So I'm just going to shut up and let it be there.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
You too?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Then I think let's do our last question, and then we'll say our goodbyes. I saw the hand.
Or rather, we'll wait for you outside so that we can sign your books.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think, firstly, just want to say thank you very much to the panelists. Thank you for being such amazing, brilliant writers, conversationalists. And I want my book to be signed as well, please. I have them here ready to go. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. It means a lot to have you here. Thank you for the contributions. Thank you for just spending time with us and being in communion with us. Still a lot to see at the festival, so we'll be seeing you in the corridors. And please also don't forget to get your copies of these amazing books. And I think with that, we'll say aluta continua, and we'll see you on the battlefield.
Thank you very much, June.
Thank you.
Thank you.